Unless you've been living under a rock for the last couple months, you've probably already heard about the new US tax law that will lower the threshold for 1099K reporting from $20,000 or 200 transactions down to $600 regardless of the number of transactions. And I know that may sound a little complicated, so let me simplify it for you a little bit. If you are a small part-time eBay seller that's been selling less than $20,000 a year and you haven't been paying your taxes on that, you're not going to be able to do that starting in 2022. Now, this new tax law does not just affect eBay, it's every selling platform: Facebook Marketplace, Mercari, Poshmark, Depop, even platforms that just deal in the trade of money like PayPal, Venmo, Cash App. All of these companies are now required to track your transactions, and anytime you have more than $600 in transactions for the year, they're going to report all that income to the IRS. So this year, 2022, it is absolutely crucial that you keep good records and really cover yourself when it comes to your taxes. Now, before we get too far into this, I have to give you guys a disclaimer that I am not a tax professional. Although this information that I'm giving you in today's video has been heavily researched and verified by several tax professionals, I myself am not a tax professional, and this is not tax advice. Before you make any crazy changes in your business, I would definitely recommend talking to your personal tax professional. So I want to start today's video by giving you guys 5 tax and bookkeeping tips that I think will really help your business if you're not already doing them. Tip number 1 is going to be to open a separate checking and savings account for your business. The last thing you want to do is have your business money and your personal money intermingled in the same account. That is going to be a huge headache for you and or your CPA when it comes time for taxes. So definitely go ahead, just go to the same bank that you already have and just open up a separate personal checking account. It doesn't have to be a business account unless you are an LLC, but chances are you're not. You're probably just a sole proprietor. So just open up a separate checking account and a separate savings account specifically for your business. Anytime you buy something for your business, it needs to come out of that account. And anytime eBay or Amazon or Mercari, anybody pays you, they need to pay you into that business account, not your personal. This isn't part of the tips, but I just talked about sole proprietors and LLCs, and I will quickly hit on this because it's really commonly misunderstood. If you start selling on eBay or any selling platform, start engaging in business of any kind, selling one thing, you are officially a sole proprietor. There's no need to fill out any paperwork or do anything special. You just engaging in business makes you a sole proprietor. If you want to take the next step to file an LLC, you can. I probably wouldn't worry about it unless you have like significant assets outside of your business that you want to protect. Or if you're doing really well with reselling and you're making like $35,000, $40,000 per year in taxable income or more, it's probably going to save you a little bit of money if you change your business to an LLC from a sole proprietor and then file your taxes with the S Corp election. I'm not trying to get too heavily into that, but if you're making like $100,000 a year and you're still a sole proprietor, definitely talk to your accountant because you're paying way too much in taxes. Tip number 2 is to make sure you are keeping good records. When eBay or any of the other selling platforms send your 1099K form to the IRS, that's going to be the total gross transactions on your account for the entire year. So for instance, our account, I think we've had like $88,000 in transactions on our eBay store, but that doesn't include shipping or fees or cost of goods sold or any of the other expenses that we have. So eBay is just going to tell the government that we made $88,000, and it's up to us to say, wait a minute, we didn't actually make that much money. We probably made more like 35 or 40 or so after all these expenses, but we have to document these expenses, the shipping costs, the cost of goods sold, the total fees, and that is super important. Some easy ways to document that would be using a spreadsheet. Our friends Adine and Melinda over at the Hustlin Hooks YouTube channel have a fantastic spreadsheet for resellers. They have a pro version and a basic version. Both of them are great, but obviously the pro is a little bit better than the basic, but they're also super affordable. I'll have a link to that down below if you guys want to check that out. You could also use GoDaddy Bookkeeping or QuickBooks Self-Employed or something like that just to keep things together. I would highly recommend once you open that bank account for your business, the checking and the savings, get a debit card for that checking account. And anytime you buy anything for your business, use that debit card. And then your bank statements will give an extra layer of protection from you, because if you bought something at Goodwill for $200 and you got the receipt and the bank statement to back it up, that'll just really protect you if you ever get audited or anything like that. So definitely do whatever you can to keep track of your expenses. The eBay is going to keep track of your sales and all that stuff, but your expenses are super important to track. Tip number 3 is to understand business expenses. I've had some questions from people in the past that have been selling for 6 or 8 months, and they say, oh, can I write off my shipping supplies? Is that like a business expense, like the boxes and stuff I buy? And of course it is. Any cost you incur in your business that is normal and ordinary for the everyday operation of your business would be a legitimate business expense. So if you're selling on eBay, you've got eBay fees, shipping costs, cost of goods sold, what you actually paid for the item. If you buy like thank you cards or anything like that, all the things that you buy to operate your business with, again, as long as they are reasonable and ordinary, you can write those off. So if you think a fish tank will help you work better and you buy $1,000 fish tank for your office, I don't think that would qualify as a business expense. It might, if you want to take that to the IRS and see what they say. I don't think that would qualify. I don't think that would be ordinary and reasonable. But again, shipping costs, shipping supplies, cost of goods sold, all that stuff, that's very reasonable. If you have a computer, if you have a cell phone that you have used for your business, internet, the home office deduction, you can take that. There are a lot of expenses that come into play. So just make sure you have a good understanding of those and you're not paying too much in taxes for stuff that you could have written off and lowered that tax bill a little bit. Tip number 4, which probably should have been tip number 1, is to save money for taxes. I know this feels like common sense for a lot of you guys watching this video right now, but I'm sure there are people watching this video that have been flying under the radar on eBay for the last couple years underneath that $20,000 threshold. And so they've been making all this income on eBay, but they've never actually had to pay taxes on it. So this year is going to be really different, and you're in for a rude awakening if you do not save some money for taxes. Generally speaking, you're going to have federal income taxes, state income taxes if your state does that, and self-employment taxes. So you're probably going to end up paying, most people, about 25 to 30% of your net profit to taxes. So if you don't save any money at all and you make $100,000 in profit, you're going to have a $25,000 to $30,000 tax bill at the end of the year. And if you don't have money set aside for that, you're going to be up the creek for sure. So definitely every time you pay yourself, every time you transfer money from the business account to the personal account, 25% of that transfer needs to go to that other tax savings account, the savings account we set up for the business. Put it in there, and then every quarter basically empty out that account and pay the IRS an estimated federal tax payment. I'm not going to get into the whole inner workings of that. Just make sure you are saving at least 25% of your net profits for taxes. And finally, tip number 5 is going to be to hire help when it comes to taxes and maybe even bookkeeping. The first 2 years I was a reseller, I was doing all the taxes myself, and it was a lot. Like I was like, oh, I'm saving money by doing it myself. I can just use TurboTax and it's free because they do all these TV commercials saying it's free. But if you're self-employed, you have to use the self-employed version of TurboTax, and that's like $250. So you're not saving, like hiring an accountant to do your taxes is probably like $400 to $600, somewhere around there. So you're only saving like $250 to do it yourself. And most people probably don't know what they're doing, and you're probably missing deductions and missing things that could save you money. And overall, you're probably going to come out ahead if you just hire a professional to do it. If you're a very part-time reseller, you're making less than $10,000 a year, you can probably do it yourself. But any more than that, I really think it's worth it to hire a professional to do it for you. It's not worth your time. It's not worth the mistakes that you'll probably make. It's the best money we have spent in our business outside of a bookkeeper. We hired a full-time bookkeeper this year that we use QuickBooks Online, and she goes in and makes sure all the transactions are good and gives us a profit and loss every month and just handles that for me. And that has also been a huge help in the business. That may be something that you want to get into later on. Like the bookkeeper is kind of expensive. They're usually like $50 to $100 an hour, and they work 2 hours a month or so. So right now we're spending, $100 to $200 a month on a bookkeeper. For us, it is worth it. But obviously if you're making, $5,000 a year, that wouldn't be worth it for you. So just explore the ideas of hiring professionals to help you when it comes to the financial side of the business, especially if you aren't fully comfortable with it yourself. So I want to wrap up today's video by answering a couple questions that I got on Instagram the other day. I posted on my story and I said I was going to be making this video, and I said, what topics do you guys want to see me cover in this video? So I have, let's say, 5 questions here that I think are pretty interesting that may be of some help to you guys. So one question says, do you claim ATM fees? When we go to the flea market, often we stop at an ATM to get cash for the business. And that ATM in particular charges us like $2.50 or $3 to actually get our cash. And that is 100% a business expense because why? It's reasonable and ordinary. It's not something that's off the wall. It's not all this stuff. We get energy drinks sometimes. We don't write out the energy drinks for the business because that's not a business expense, that's a personal item. But the ATM fees that we incur getting cash to spend on our business, I'm comfortable writing that off on the business because it's ordinary and reasonable. Next question says, are items taxable that are sold for less than what you purchased? And that's a really good question because a lot of people, when they start reselling, they usually start with things around their house that they already own. And chances are, if you're doing that, you're going to be selling them for less than you originally paid. Unless if you bought something at Goodwill for $1 and then used it for a year and then sold it for 10, that would be profit and that would be taxable. But if you bought something for 60 and then you sold it for 10, that would not be taxable because that's not profit. So you're only taxed on profit, not on your actual gross sales. This next one says, talk about employees as a non-LLC. I'm assuming you mean like hiring employees. And whether you're a sole proprietor or an LLC, it's still a pretty big headache. If you don't have any employees and you want to hire your first one, you've got to, do all the payroll stuff. You've got to have workers' comp insurance generally. So it's a pretty big step. I would say before you explore hiring an employee, you could look at hiring an independent contractor. So for instance, we have a lady that comes in and does our shipping for us when we are out of town. We pay her as an independent contractor, not as an employee, because it's so sparse. Like she comes in once every 2 or 3 months. It's not something we need to pay her as an employee for. Also, you can look at hiring people to help you outside of the business, and that would allow you to have more time in the business to increase profitability without the extra headache of hiring an employee. So like hiring somebody to clean your house or cut your grass or do your laundry or something like that. That's hiring other businesses to give you more time in your business, not hiring other people to help in your business. Does that make sense? Like hiring somebody to clean our house has been way, way better for us than getting into hiring an employee. There's just so much red tape around an employee, and I wouldn't get into that, honestly. This next one says mileage. Say if you go sourcing and don't find anything, or you need to run other errands. This is a very good question. I would say if you go to a thrift store and you don't find anything, you can still write off those mileage because the purpose of that trip was still business related. The ability to write off the mileage isn't determined by whether you find something or not. So you can still write off that. I will say if you have to run other errands, I would probably not track that. So like our mileage app that we use, Mile IQ, every time we stop the car, it treats that as a separate trip. So we'll leave our house and go to Goodwill, and that's a trip. And then if we leave Goodwill and go to the grocery store, that'll come in as a trip as well. And so I will classify the trip from home to Goodwill as business and the trip from Goodwill to the grocery store as personal. So it's pretty easy to track stuff like that if you use an app like Mile IQ. Next one says, what do I do if everything snowballed fast and I didn't keep track of my cost of goods? That is a scary situation to be in, especially getting into 2022 when you're actually going to be held accountable for these things. I will say, if you don't take anything else from this video, if you didn't hear anything else I said, open a separate checking account. That is the most important thing you can do, because even if you just open a separate checking account on January 1st and just use that debit card in that account for all your business transactions, you never track anything, you never keep any receipts or anything like that, you and your accountant can still go back and use those bank statements from that account. And as long as every transaction in that account is either a deposit or withdrawal for your business, you can basically use the bank statements as like your profit and loss statement. It's not ideal, but in this case, if everything got out of hand, you would still have those bank statements to fall back on. If you didn't have that separate account and you were using your personal account the whole time, then you'd have to go through all the bank statements with a highlighter and say, that was personal, that was business, that was personal, that was business. It's very, very annoying. So open a separate checking account. Even if you're like, I don't know if this is a real business, I just want to resell for fun. I don't care. It's free. In most banks, it's free. Open a separate checking account before you do anything else. It is so important. What did I say? What's the most important takeaway from today's video? Open a separate checking account for your business. Please, please, please do that. Please. And I'll do one last question here. This one says, how do you handle bad inventory that you purchase but now have to redonate in regards to bookkeeping? So generally, your write-off for the item that you bought to sell is going to be whatever you paid for it. If you bought something for $1 to sell and then you break it or lose it or realize it sucks and you redonate it, the write-off for that item is just going to be $1, whatever you paid for it. You can't buy something for $1 that's worth $100 and then lose it and then write off $100. That's not how it works. There's a difference between charitable donations of personal items that you own and redonation of items that you bought for your business. Anytime you buy something to resell, your cost of goods, your write-off for that item is going to be the exact same, whether you sell it lose it, break it, or re-donate it. It's always going to be what you originally paid. So that is going to do it for me today, folks. I'm sure if you're a seasoned reseller, you may not have learned much from today's video, but I appreciate hitting the like button anyway. And if you have learned something from this video, definitely drop a comment and let me know down below. Also, if you guys want some more detailed tax information, definitely go check out my friend Mark 2's YouTube channel. It's called Not Your Dad's CPA. He is a licensed tax professional. He is our personal CPA that we use, and he makes great YouTube videos going over pretty in-depth information on reseller-focused taxes. He also has a free guide, it's business starter guide for resellers. It's free, linked in the description of most of his videos. He also has a paid Reseller Tax Academy course that is a super in-depth look at reseller taxes, and it is just really, really helpful, especially if you want a firm grasp over how to understand taxes as a reseller. I'll have a link to that down below as well. But thank you guys so much for watching today's video. If you have enjoyed it at all, hit the like button. If you haven't already, go ahead and hit that subscribe button down below as well. Thank you guys again for watching. You're the best, and we'll catch you on the next one.